Welcome to Confident Connections, the podcast that helps you show up with confidence and connect with people on a deeper level. I'm Lisa Liu, and here we break down the small signals that create big impact. Body language, presence, and the simple habits that help you communicate with ease, increase your influence, and magnify your impact. You'll learn how to make strong first impressions, build trust faster, and feel more confident in any conversation or setting. If you're ready to improve your communication skills and create connections that move your life and your leadership forward, you are in the right place. I've got a fantastic resource for you that is completely free and is really going to help you, especially if you've ever felt awkward with meeting someone new, or maybe you just want to know how to make the person across from you feel seen, valued, and understood, especially if you've never met them before. Or maybe you just want to get out of the people pile. You want to be memorable instead of just saying, hey, what do you do for a living? Which is what everybody says, totally forgettable. Maybe you want some new ways to engage. This is my How Not to Be Awkward conversation starters, and it is going to span professional and networking events that you may go to, connecting with empathy, and even transitioning into deeper talk. There's also a great little pocket connection card that you can just snapshot to keep on your phone and use right before you head in to a situation where you just want to have some great conversation starters, literally in the palm of your hand and in your pocket. If this sounds interesting to you, I want you to go to lisaluimpact.com/connection. You'll also find this down below in the show notes, completely free to you, lisaluimpact.com/connection. Welcome to the Confident Connections podcast. I'm thrilled you're here, and if you didn't hear last week's episode, it's worth a listen because I gave an overview of the DISC personality assessment. Okay, so these are assessments that I can give to individuals, but I'm hired by companies often to come in, give these assessments, and do workshops around solving the people puzzle. How do we understand how we are wired, our best communication style, our personality style, our behavioral style? And how can we best understand other people so that we do show up with curiosity over judgment? So that's beneficial to listen to so that you can hear what are the benefits of understanding how we're wired. I go into that a little bit deeper. So today I'm going over the D styled, so D, I, S, and C. I'm going to go over the D, and then next week the I, the week following S, the week after that C. What I want you to understand is that this is a language, not a label. So although I can identify as an I am an I on the disc, a very high I really am not a letter. It's something we say, it's kind of a language that we speak, but I'm made up of D, I, S, and C, and so are you. I have some degree of all of them in me. But if I were to sit with you and give you an assessment, you would see that there is 1, 2, or maybe 3 that are what we call above the midline. So you are moving a little bit more dominantly in specific styles and certainly in different contexts. The idea is for us to become healthy enough within our behavioral style so that we can flex, meaning depending on the context, we can put on the right behavioral hat for what is needed at that time. So understand that as I'm going through this, if you're like, oh, well, I think maybe I am a D, but only at work. I'm not that at home. That's normal. That's okay. Or vice versa. So it really just depends on the context that you may find yourself being a little bit more like one style than another. And as we become more self-aware, and hopefully we all care about that, and that's why we're listening to this podcast in the first place, as we become more self-aware, we can see where, I'm a little too strong in that particular personality trait right now, and maybe I need to grab the hat of empathy, which is more of our S-styled friends, which you'll hear about in a couple weeks, because that's what's needed in the context of this situation. So it's not becoming less of who we are, it's just being able to flex a little bit more. That's how a self-aware leader presents themselves and communicates. And this is all about communicating and connecting with other people, because we're not just here to understand how we're wired. Hopefully you will begin to understand how those around you are wired. And maybe that person that feels a little bit like sandpaper at work, maybe you understand them just a little bit more. It's not that they're difficult or complicated, they're just different. They're wired differently. And we all fit beautifully within a tapestry, within a puzzle. We all fit beautifully together. We don't want a whole bunch of just one style of personality. We want a mix, because then that brings context. It brings more cohesion and better collaboration when we do have that puzzle as a whole, okay? So if I'm looking at a team and the entire team is wired in just one or two of these styles, there's some missing elements. And so they're also missing some very important perspective that another style could bring, but they're missing because they're literally missing. They're missing that kind of person there. So let's dive into our D style today. Okay. So think, does this sound like you? Does it sound like you in certain contexts, in certain environments? Or do you know someone who sounds like this? Okay. So our D-wired friends, we like to say that they do move quickly. They're fast paced and they're a bit more task oriented. So we have a faster pace and a slower pace, or more extroverted and more introverted, or more outgoing, and more reserved. Our D-wired friends are definitely going to be a faster pace and a bit more outgoing. But then we also have two different sides of a coin. So we've got more people-oriented and more task-oriented. And our D-wired friends are going to be more task-oriented than they are people-oriented, okay? So D's, faster paced, task-oriented, confident, assertive, challenging the status quo. They seem to like control. They dislike routine. They're direct. They can be forceful, strong-willed, ambitious, competitive, results-oriented, and risk-taking. D stands for dominant, direct, decisive. Does that sound like you? Does it sound like someone you know? Can you see how a D-styled person who is task-oriented and moves quickly could struggle with maybe a coworker who is more reserved and takes a little bit more time to get things done? Maybe because they've got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Maybe they're very detail-oriented. Well, that could be difficult for a D-wired individual because they move quick. So this is, again, we're wanting to bring understanding over judgment and curiosity so that you can start to see, oh, wow, they're not being difficult. They're just wired different than I am. So we could ask this and look at it through that lens, through every one, all four of these personality traits. So some limitations for a D-styled person can be impatience, insensitivity, maybe some selective listening. So if you're a D-wired person, that's some areas for some personal growth. What are some needs of a D-wired person? Okay, maybe you're a boss, maybe you're a leader, and you're like, you know what, I have a team of Ds. Great. Here's some of their needs. They're going to work best with autonomy, with challenges, with creative license, with a faster pace, with a bit of control. And these are just some ways that you can allow them and help them to flourish in what they do. Okay? So what are some motivations of a D? Achievement, immediate results, and some complex problems, right? Solving those complex problems, that can be a real motivator. What are some fears or irritations for a D? And again, when I say a D, that sounds like a label, but we're talking a language here. We're talking about someone who might be a high D, who might, move within their D style more often than not. So some fears and irritations could be being taken advantage of. They do not want to be taken advantage of. Nobody does, but this is very problematic for a D. Inefficiency is a fear or an irritation. Indecision, loss of control, and sometimes even being vulnerable. So these are some things that if you are a D, they're things to understand about yourself and to understand about a D-wired person around you, because we want to understand them, not be frustrated by them. We want to be curious about them and understand how they fit into the bigger picture, or how we, if you're a D style and you're hearing this and light bulbs are going off, how you fit into the bigger picture. So how do we communicate with and approach a D? So we like to say that Ds they're no fluff and stuff, okay? They like the bullet points. So we want to be direct and brief. We want to stay in the big picture. Don't try and share all the details. You're going to lose your Ds. So think about from a sales perspective. If you knew that you were probably sitting across from a D-styled person, can you see how beneficial it would be to understand, I don't need to get into the weeds. I don't need to give them stories about my children or my children's children. No, we want to stay in the big picture and not share all the details with them. We want to provide options when it comes to making a decision, when they need to make a decision. And we want to keep our focus on the results and not the process. If you're thinking about a D, I want you to attach in your mind a medal to a D, okay? Just like a little medal emoji, attach it to a D, because Ds like to win. They like a challenge. So that might help you remember our D-styled friends. So I'm going to keep it there. I want to keep it pretty brief each week with each style so that you can really wrap your mind around, oh, wow, I think this might be me. Here's some areas for me to grow. Wow, those are some core fears. I really relate to that. Or you may not, because maybe if I were to give you your personality assessment, you would be a DS or a DC or a DIS, right? Remember, depending on the context of the situation, there are times where different parts of our personality are going to rise up a little bit more. But overall, this is how we are wired to be. But because we are multifaceted, because we are multi-layered, then we really are comprised of all of these. But there should be one or two that you're like raising your hand going, yes, I feel like that speaks more to my personality than maybe some of these others, okay? So next week, we're going to talk about I's. I's are influential, they're inspiring, and we're going to get into all the details about I's. So look, share this with a friend. I really think this is going to help us understand ourselves and each other more. Next week, we'll dive into I's. The week after that, into S's. And then on our last week, we'll talk about our C-wired friends. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week where we'll dive into the I style. Bye for now.